other thing I wanted to ask you too about was the horror project that you said you were going to be working on before. Was that one of the things you were still working on, or is that something that kind of put to the side?
That's there. That's
Okay.
there. It's done. I'm actually, the other job I've been doing today was doing the shot list for the pickups for that one. So
Okay.
pretty good. It's pretty scary. It's an interesting one. I'm not sure if it'll go out as a produced by or quite how the how that one will run. But I'm proud of it. The acting's very, very good in it. Tim Murphy's in it. Who's also in Hellhound Fury.
Yeah.
It's a very small cast. It's only 4 people. But it's pretty bloody good. I'm very proud of it.
Is it like a one set location type of a film where so it's kind of like a broad
things going on in it? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So with Accident Man, I know you mentioned before that just because making these smaller films are very difficult. They're going to start shooting that movie next month here, but are you still in some way or shape or form credited in terms of producing, or not? So once you stepped away from that was it?
I would say a hired gun on the first one. So I replaced a director who had passed on it at the last minute. Couldn't get his head around the script, I believe was the actual statement that Scott gave me. And I think they were up against the wall. Scott and I had done Savage Dog,
right?
And that it just happened that I was the guy that fell into that one right there and then.
Right.
It needed a lot of rewriting. Script was not. It was far from ready to shoot, and making it work, casting it and putting it together. But when you do a film as a hired gun, you're a hired gun. You're not a producer. You're not a writer on it. You're not a creator.
Okay, that's what you were saying.
Fight to get those credits.
Right.
And I don't. I genuinely just like the director credit. And every once in a while, it's based on one of my scripts, so I'll take a script writing credit. But even that, I'll share with other writers if it makes the project better. The director credit is the only one that I have ownership sort of claim to, that I don't like to share. But it was, it was fun working on the first one. But I don't.
Right.
There's no desire there. There's no new ground to break. The unfortunate thing is with pictures that aren't sort of a very high budget level, on the one side you often get enormous artistic freedom, which is brilliant, and I enjoy that part of it. But the negative, the con, is that no one puts any money behind publicizing these films. So you could put out an epic, and it'll get $55 worth of publicity and advertising, the same as the director who's a hired gun journeyman, whose films are unwatchable, because they're going through the same sales system, and it's just not fair, because you emerge from that a year later in exactly the same spot you were in a year earlier in career-wise, and you do one or two of those to build your career and get some good credits, but it's not a growing business. There's nothing, you're sitting in the edit room, you've run out of money, you can't pay your bills, right. And you finish this minor work of art that you put your heart and soul into, and they throw it to streaming, and it gets a tiny DVD release with maybe they go to the to 4 or 5 internet sites and get you an interview, and that's it, and which is fine. And I'm certainly, you go into a deal like that fully aware of what's going to happen, so right. I'm not complaining or bitching after the fact, but you don't choose to do that unless you have to. You do a few of those, and you work really, really hard to get them done. And for an up-and-coming director, it's a hell of a break to get one of those, to work with someone as fantastic as Scott and that
right.
brilliant cast that we put around him, and a film for Sony, no less. It's the most wonderful thing in the world to do that. But my bills have got to the point, and my personal position to the point where I can't afford to take a year off to do another film like that, unfortunately, as much as I'd love to, because I love working with Scott. And the challenge of continuing a brand, a franchise that I helped create is enormous. That the ego, is talking in your ear saying, do it.
Yeah.
But you have to think smart. You have to think for the future. And for me, the better fight right now is to try and get films that have a slightly bigger, potential on the market, in the marketplace, as unfortunately, but it's the way it goes.
When I heard you share that story a while back, one thing I also had picked up on too, that from the last time you and I had spoke, or when myself and David had Stephen and were all speaking with you, you were pretty much like really coming off the success and the well-received film, Avengement, and among the other films that were coming out at that time, that people were starting to take more notice of you. And then, and I hope what would happen was that I would see a number of different projects that would come into your plate that would allow you to work with some, bigger names and whatnot, and obviously in a much more bigger production. And then when I saw, not knowing anything about Hell Hath No Fear at that time, but then when I'd heard that your name was in the mix of White Elephant, and the names were being dropped in there, Michael Rooker, Olga Kurylenko, and of course Bruce Willis, that to me was like the sign of like, okay, things are obviously changing for you. And I think at one point you had mentioned before that as a result of that, the film's being well received, the representation had changed on your behalf on for you as well. Basically, you have an agency that is at a different level of awareness, if you will, that more than likely will probably get you access to certain things that probably before 2-3 years ago you wouldn't have access to before. Now you're probably into it. You're able to get to that door now because of the representation you're able to that you have now.
It certainly helps. It's
yeah. So, and that's what I was wondering too, because I was curious about how things are going for you now. I mean, I know there's a lot of things you won't be able to delve into here, but there's got to be a part of you that's seeing that trajectory change for yourself, and then being able to do things that I'm not sure if it's really more about, if it's just opportunities that are available just to take on, because, you're doing indie films and you just take what you can, and then you get to a certain level within that community that you're able to take it to the next step and make a little more demands, or your name has a certain set of values. If this point now, is that more or less the same thing, but just at a different level?
It's a really good question, and it's a really smart one, but you're applying a formula to it that's far more rigid than it actually is. It's a very, very nerve-wracking business, and you'll have a great plan, and if you don't work for 6 months, that plan it has to change really, really quickly. And you have to go somewhere else. And I've been in that position so many times. I've been in the gutter. I've had my nose bloodied. I've been, lying, metaphorically, obviously, desperate, wondering what's going to happen next if I ever direct again. And you pull yourself up, you brush yourself down, you work out what the plan's going to be, and maybe you take, the first low-hanging fruit that comes your way, the first movie that has a paycheck attached to it, and you do whatever the hell you can with it.
Right.
And that's it'd be nice to say that there's this great plan that you put in 5 years at the indie level, which will hopefully break you to the next level, but it just doesn't work like that at all. And each move, everything's predicated on that next movie and how well it performs, whether it does well, whether it comes in on budget. I mean, films fall apart midway through.
Right.
So it's such a strange business. I have been extraordinarily lucky from Savage Dog to now, which has been a 5-year run, which is just brilliant. That I have to pinch myself. When I was in Georgia directing White Elephant, I actually had to pinch myself because it was just so much fun, so exciting, and what a fantastic cast to work with. You missed out John Malkovich as well on that list.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
But, this guy that left school at 15, that's never had a proper college education, is on set with these cats that I adored growing up. Bruce and John Malkovich. To listen to these guys tell anecdotes about you're in a state of absolute awe, because those were the films that made you who you were. The Killing Fields. We were talking about the Killing Fields that he shot with Roland Joffe I think they've shot in the Philippines, that one. But these were films that I adored. You're like, good God, I'm working, and you're looking through the monitor.
Yeah.
So it's really, really fun, and I've been very lucky. I loved working with Scott. I love working with Scott in the present tense and future. We're going to work together and do a lot of stuff. He brings out the very best in me. I like to think I bring out the best in him as well. Sometimes it's a bit fraught on set, but that's often how you get the best out of each other. It's a challenge, and we push each other, even from the script, from the development through to the directing on set, through to the way that I'm allowing the film to be scheduled, through to the post, through to the way we're going to lay the sound in. For example, Scott was trusting us to do Avengement, and he had this, he desperately didn't want music over that final fight scene. It was very, very important to him. And as a joke, I said, the producers have forced us to put this piece of music over it. And that's the sort of game, we play with each other.
Right.
It's very, very serious, and it's a collaboration. I've had a wonderful, wonderful run with him, and it's almost 5 years, and it's brilliant. And I want to do many, many more with him. But for me, I just can't afford to do the smaller pictures. It just doesn't make sense with what I want to do. Eventually you're going to do one where the luck doesn't go your way, because so much is luck when you're making a film that anyway. And eventually you're going to do, and Debt Collector 2, I felt we pushed way too close to that point. Scott had already left when I was finishing the film. I had another 6 or 8 days to do on it. And you have a film like Hell Hath No Fury, where every single day, luck it shines on you and everything goes in your favor. And then you have a film like Debt Collector 2, where every single day things go wrong. And,
well, Scott, I think you may have highlighted too before. Scott was I think in one interview he mentioned that Debt Collector, the first one, things worked out pretty smoothly for the most part as far as productions go. Right. And he thought, well, Debt Collector 2 will probably be more or less the same thing. And then he does a show on his YouTube channel, The Art of Action, which I found something really, really unique about that production, which I didn't know. And then I actually went back to watch the movie again just because of that story, that anecdote that he told. Because he had Lewis on the show and they were talking about the making of Debt Collector 2. And one of the things they were pointing out was that there was a particular day where you guys were having that fight sequence out in the desert, and you have a certain surrounding around you, and you guys had the permit the application for the permit submitted. You thought it went through. You went out to that location, shot it. Police show up, say, "Where's your permit?" Oh, here it is. And then you find out that the person that was supposed to submit it didn't. And then as a result, that you guys got kicked off, and you guys were lucky to find a place.
10 o'clock in the morning.
Right. So the ground you guys found at another location matched exactly the same, but the surrounding was not, which is why you had those high angle shots.
It was the location we shot.
Right. And then he pointed out, he's like, "Oh, look, and there's Jesse." And there's a shot where I forgot the name of the girl who it was Lewis, I think it was, that hit you in the face or something with the gun, and you flipped over. And I was like, "Oh shit!" So I went back to watch the movie just for that scene alone, just to pick up on that. And then that's not the first time you've done that. You did it for a Benjamin as well too, where you actually you were hit by the car because the female stunt wasn't wanting to do. I can't remember the exact story, but
didn't want to do it. Saw the car. She changed her mind after we established her running through the streets.
Right.
And said, she said, "You want me to do a car hit on that?" We're like, "Yeah." She's like, "Nah, I don't think so."
Oh wow. So but that's the thing that showed, and this is the part where I remember you saying something specifically about your experiences on Debt Collector 2, because I think a lot of people had asked you, especially at that time, Debt Collector 3, when's that coming out? And I remember distinctly you saying at that time that, I'm glad the films turned out really well, but I'm moving on from that because I want to do other things. And I wonder if a lot of it had to do because of those rough experiences everyone had experienced.
It was very, very rough. And Scott and Louis, bless their hearts, worked their souls out on it, but they leave. They leave, and I'm left finishing the picture. And it was, as I said, it was about 7 or 8 days of torture where everything that went wrong could go wrong. We were filming in a abandoned nightclub that hadn't been used for 20 years, and one of the Zerks, which are these paintball fired sparks that make like a spark as if a gun has hit a hard surface, set off the water sprinklers in there. And I was in there trying to get equipment out with all this water running over me. But what I didn't realize is that you mustn't go near that water because it's been in those tubes for 20 years. So I got some kind of illness that I was vomiting. It was.
Really? Was that bad?
I had to go to hospital. I had to take 2 bags of saline, the saline solution.
Yeah.
My friends at the time, my stunt coordinator came over and he looked at me and said, "You got to he basically picked me up, put me in the back of his car and took me to the emergency room." It was, and this was from this water that came out of the sprinkler system. It took about 3 days to just become this amoebic, kind of dysentery, awful.
Wow.
It was firing from both ends that day. It was not good. But the point is not, any of my rigors or scars, because those are fun things that we can chat about. But the point is, when you make a picture at that budget level, you get lucky. It's like spinning the wheel, and then you'll come up with one, as we did with Debt Collector 2, where everything went wrong. Even the script was very, very difficult. I mean, it's 15 or 20 passes. The ADs, everyone was upset with me because I had to keep working on that script right up to the very moment of shooting it, and frantic rewrites, because that stuff I don't mind, but production-wise, you're just really cutting it very, very tight.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you had a little bit more time and a little bit more money, you wouldn't have to cut it that tight. So it's a decision you make. Do I need this for my resume? Do I need this to establish myself? And if you're doing something you've done before, it's not going to establish, it's not going to put you in a, you know, and by the way, the money goes down each time on these things. They want to spend the same amount, but a lot of the crew members and shooting in LA, that continues to rise. So you have less and less each time. Wow. You know, it's a wonderful place to cut your teeth making those kind of pictures, and you try and put as much drama and good acting and good performance and character work into these pictures as you possibly can. You get some good reviews, and then you build on that, as I did. You get representation. You start getting offers of bigger films. Bigger name actors want to work with you, and you move and you go with it. But you never say never. You know, if nothing happens for 4 or 5 months, brother, I'll be back out there with my director's viewfinder under my arm, looking for a job, and you're back to it again, and you'll go back. You look at the lives of any of our favorite hero directors, John Huston, Peckinpah, these guys. You know, they all took bloody noses at some point, and when they got the bloody nose, they had to go off, and they took a little time off, and they came back with whatever it was that brought them back. You know, which was more than likely cheaper than what they've been working on before. You know, and that's how it is. Friedkin, Frankenheimer, all of these guys love. It's a tough game. You can't quit the moment something goes wrong, but you also can't keep repeating yourself. You must make offshoots. You must push yourself artistically. You absolutely must, and you must take gambles. You have to, otherwise you're nothing but a routine. You know.
So I wanted to ask you this. Believe it or not, I wanted to ask you this here after we had spoken last year, which I'm surprised it slipped my mind at the time, because it was something that I noticed about your career at that time, where you just had a lot of highs and lows. And the one thing I wanted to ask you was that, you know, well, you know, I was just pointing out, I wanted to point out about the personal times you've had going through those motions, you know, the highs and the lows, and, you know, you have some success where you're getting recognition, but, you know, everything else doesn't actually fall through with, as far as, you know, the amount of time and money you may need for the next upcoming project, despite the fact the other one's well received, there's some money, and then for whatever reason, it just didn't, you know, bump up the pay or whatever else. But what I'm pointing out is that, you know, when I heard you tell the story about your, you know, you were going to director jail in our conversation, where you made a movie, wasn't well received, and then you had to go right back into the trenches, where it messed with your mind for a little bit, and you actually were angry at that point. But then you started to appreciate the process again, and learning something new about what you learned from the directors, Kenneth Branagh, P.T. Anderson, and obviously Spielberg. And then
I was lucky to have those 3 movies.
Right. So you had the high marks of filmmakers, and you saw what they've done differently for you to be able to approach your directing, if you will, to not make you. I think if I remember correctly, you said I was directing a script, not, you know, I forgot how you worded it correctly, because you said it was
budget, the schedule,
right. So and I was wondering, when you know, when you're going through that time, did you ever feel like giving up and say, you know, maybe I'm just way over my head right now, because I'm not getting where I want to be at. This is not where I want to be. I mean, did that ever cross your mind, or is it something you've always stuck with it, that, you know what, no matter what, I'm going to make it work despite the setbacks?
The thing that separates me from a lot of the guys that are out there at the moment is I don't have a college education. I don't, you know, to make the kind of money you make as a film director, even a low budget one, I couldn't do it. If I went into the workplace right now, short of real estate, and I'm not really very good at that sort of thing, I would be working a 9 to 5. You know, I'd have to start with some other career that I wouldn't be able to do. So I'm backed up against the wall. The stunt stuff is fun. I could have, you know, made a career of being a stunt coordinator or a second unit director, but I have an enormous ego. And I didn't like doing that, because I was doing these action units for subpar directors, and then, you know, they were getting the credit for the action movie at the end of it, and I'd stand there and realize that this guy couldn't direct his way out of a paper bag, but was getting more work based upon, you know, the sweat equity that I had put towards his career, you know, and that's no fun. And so I joke and say I have too much ego, but truly that was not a smart way of going about making a living, because you end up not liking yourself. You become one of those disgruntled, cynical, angry people, and there's enough of them in the universe as it is. I love life. I roll out of bed very, very happy every morning and very excited to see what the day brings. We're working through on the board behind where you are right now. I have about 10 projects that are in various stages of development, post-production, and we have one that's got a theatrical release on November 3rd, and goes on the 5th for general public. And so this is the life that I'd always imagined I was going to have. I'm very, very excited.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal. And the list of cast that we have that the scripts are out to is mind-blowing to me. It's everything I dreamt about on my best day as a stuntman, sitting in the back, with all the other stunt guys wondering, was this going to be my lot for the rest of my life? So I couldn't be happy. And I couldn't, as I said, on White Elephant, I had to pinch myself on several days, looking out at all the stunt guys, looking at the cameras and realizing this is what the grind was about, the 20 years of, slugging and hitting the ground and rolling and landing on my head and getting shot as an ND stunt guy in the background and slowly working your way up. That was what it was about. And that's a wonderful place to be. So listen, your question was valid. But I'm very, very happy with the way it's all going,
Right. I would imagine that's the case because last time last time we spoken and seeing how things have evolved for you now. So I guess this is a good segue for us to get into Hell, Heaven, and Fury now because
but everyone has ups and downs,
Right,
every career has ups and downs, and mine are no worse than anyone else's, some are devastating, and I think what defines you in the arts, not just film directing, but in the arts period, whether you're an actor, a painter, a musician, is how you deal with those
setbacks,
perceived setbacks or down. And most of the time, by the way, what comes out of that is renewed energy, which takes you somewhere that people weren't expecting you to go. So, to even take the mindset that it's a setback or a bad thing is interesting as well. I've because you come out of it. Kind of like, what? Fuck it, I'm going to prove it to you guys.
Yeah, I think I know what you're going with this here.
A bad review, well, bugger you. Wait till you see what I come up with for the next one,
Yeah.
And so in many, I know it sounds easy now without having to read the bad review in front of me, but
right.
I got far more from bad reviews, far more satisfaction, far more drive, far more impetus, far more inspiration to achieve from a bad review than I ever did from a good one. The good ones, you read the first couple of lines, you put it aside. It's like, they're going to think I paid this guy. And
right. Yeah, well,
bad ones are the ones that kick you in the pants, and they're like, God damn it, fuck, what can I do? What can I come up with? Little, and then you stop because after a while, you realize it's nonsensical. You drive yourself, but really, I don't see my career as ups and downs. I see it as, there's great, wonderful moments and some that are maybe a little less than wonderful, but they were still important to the end result. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, I do. Believe me, I do.
Wide-eyed and cosmic awareness and all that kind of stuff. Right. But honestly, if you only had good luck, and I think work would not be that great, Yeah. I think you need those critical bumps. You really do. You've got to have them. They wake you up, It's like a wake up.
No, I think you actually highlighted a really good point. Yeah, I think you're actually the very first person that actually, was able to articulate it in that sense where I think I never actually looked at it that way. Because, the general response, I'm not saying that what people that have asked this question were wrong. That's not what I'm getting at. But I think the way you expressed it was actually a lot more, it makes a lot more sense in my opinion, because, there's, you do bring up a valid point that the setbacks that people may perceive as being a bad thing could actually be a very good thing, depending how you decide to handle it moving forward. And obviously, I think your career is definitely an example of that too. Because like I said, I've seen your films from when at least the ones I can get as far as back as I can to watch, to where you are with it now. It's night and day. I mean, there's a complete difference in terms of your directing, your storytelling, the script that you wrote, the script you've worked on. So, and I was trying to get into now with Hell, Heaven, and Fury, which is I want to be able to segue into that now because. So I mentioned before that I felt like this is actually your best work so far, and I'm hoping you can you would take the time to understand where I'm coming from with this here, because the one thing that I mentioned to you before that I took away as a negative was the fact that the film was too short. because I'm saying, and I'm trying to be very cognizant of how I say this here, because I don't want to make it seem as if though that I'm saying these things to you and make it seem like you should have done that. That's not my intention. But the reason I'm pointing it out here is because there was the characters we're following here in the story: Marie von Brunwick, of course, the four soldiers, George, who ended up dying, of course, which his character arc was actually very interesting, and then of course Clement, played by your good buddy Dom. With the exception of the four soldiers, everyone else had a really unique story that I wanted more time with, because I felt like I want to see more of a background as far as their connections with the story. I mean, you got the exposition, which I thought was handled really well, but because that's one reason why I kept going back to the movie to see if I can make sense of like the amount of time that we had with these characters, with because the film is 90 minutes long. But when I'm watching Marie's background, I wanted to see more of her actually getting to know Von Berg, and actually, because we had that conflict of interest for her, where she's obviously getting close to him for one reason, and then when you see her, committing these sexual acts with him, and in these intimate moments, I think the average person may look and say, well, she's just doing something, they may question her motive, but I think there's actually a lot more, is more complex, in my opinion, about how she does that. But I would love to see the setup of how she got to there, to be at that level with him. That was the part that I really was wanting to see the most of.
I wrote so much exposition on all these characters. In the end, we gave it most of it as a verbal to the actors themselves. I said, look, this is where you've come from, this is what you've done, this is why you're here. Because we picked these guys up midway through, and you're faced with a question: do you show all of that to the audience?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you let the audience pick up on as much as possible themselves? Because often, as human beings, we'll fall into a scenario. The conversation going on that's dramatic in a supermarket you've just walked into, and you have to get involved in this, and you've got to piece together what came between this guy and this girl.
You got a good point. Yeah,
and that's more interesting often than having to have it sort of laid out for you. Here's notes on these two people you're about to meet. Let's go meet. There's something about not really knowing where you are. And when I read the script, it was one of the first things that I found very exciting, was I had no clue what was going on between all these people for the first third of the script. I changed that a little bit because I felt we needed to give a little bit more to the audience. But the way that Romain Serre, the French writer who wrote this script, had written it was literally, you are completely lost. And for the first third, you think that these four Americans are the absolute worst human beings on earth, and then slowly everyone's motivations come clean. And that was what appealed to me about the script, something that I hadn't seen before. It's like, wow, it's such a familiar genre to work in, especially now. Everyone's making these cheap World War II movies, and they're just really bad, man. I watched a whole bunch of them on the way to this one, researching. There's some great ones out there as well. But then this was something that felt fresh and different, because you had to learn, you had to work out what people's backstory was, where they'd come from, what they were doing, why they wanted what they wanted. I like that. I thought that was fun.
I think you actually bring up a good point on that. Maybe that's because that's the thing, because being here in America, where everything is spoon fed to us here, I realize now that you mentioned this, I think I've been really spoiled and being fed everything. So I think you actually bring up a good point. But I mean, again, though, in watching the film, I still appreciate and I still love what you had done with the story, and everyone involved in putting those pieces together, I think worked really well. Here's the one thing I wanted to ask you too about the filming location, because I thought, unless I was wrong, that the film was shot entirely in California, but when I saw the credits, it says shot in beautiful Belarus. Is that?
It was shot in Minsk.
Right. Okay.
So there was a big portion of the movie was shot there. All of the tanks, the 300 Waffen SS soldiers, the crossing of the bridge, all of that stuff was Belarus, and then some of the motorcycle marching stuff was Belarus. The wide vistas, we actually have the wide vistas of France are actually from the Provence region, which is where the film set in south of France, which is the same town that they shot. They set Marcel Pagnol set Jean de Florette and Manon des Sources, in which are two of my favorite French movies, which
okay.
So Aubagne, which is in Provence, which is in the very south, which is where Renoir, Jean Renoir, the director, the son of the painter, Jean Renoir made a lot of his movies in Provence, and so did Marcel Pagnol. And so it's a very, very interesting place. And I like the idea that our film was set there as well. So we have footage that was shot there with a splinter unit. We have footage that came from Minsk, and then some of Southern California. And then also there's a lot of the World War II footage, which is obviously World War II. That was actual footage.
Yeah, you guys had to buy that to incorporate in the movie. Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
What was amazing was I'd wanted to do this, the lipstick swastika and the tearing off of the clothes and the shaving of the head, which is what I knew had happened. And it wasn't until doing the research on what stock footage I can actually buy that I found footage of the girl with her hair getting cut, with the shirt getting pulled off, and with the lipstick swastika being drawn on, which was one of those uncanny hell hath no fury strokes of luck that we had all through the shoot. This was shot at the height of COVID, when everyone was bubbling, and the only way we could do it was by bubbling at the location. No one was allowed to leave for the 14 days. So we had people sleeping in tents at the location. There was one building there that I think 4 people slept in that. And then at the top house, we had all of the cast and key crew staying in different rooms, sharing rooms, and with sleeping bags on the floor and stuff. It was an amazing shoot where we all basically lived in character. The other wonderful thing at this location is cell phones don't work. So there was no interference from the real world. So Nina and Daniel and the boys basically went back to a way of living that didn't include your cell phone every day, which I think they found amazingly helpful in sort of maintaining this kind
of preparation. Yeah. So
it's a shot almost in chronological order, which is something that's very, very rare, and you never get the opportunity to do.
Right. So explain to me about because I think Nina, in one particular interview that for the promotion of this film, I think she, and correct me if I'm wrong about this here, I think she mentioned that she was actually there to help prep for another actress for the part of Marie, and then the actress ended up dropping out, and then she ended up taking over the role. Is that what I heard?
We had a wonderful actress. I don't think I should name her name. I don't think it would be. It doesn't need to happen, because she's very sad about missing the movie. Obviously, who was hard to play the role. She had won an Oscar, the Russian version of the Oscar. She's fabulous. She would have done an incredible job. It would have been wonderful. It would have been a very, very different movie. And she was scheduled to come in 4 days before filming. And as I say, we're at the height of COVID, and I think the producers paid about $25,000 or $30,000 in visa fees and lawyer fees to get all of her, so she could get into the US. She's Russian national. And as we got closer and closer, I realized we were going to have to do something, because we couldn't push the date. We had actors that were disappearing out of the country, and that there were people's schedules, even in COVID, were tough. And so Nina, who's a dear friend of mine, she played Wonder Woman in the I made 5 years or so ago, which was one of the boosts of my career. By the way, Nina paid me to write a script much earlier on, which saved my bacon, because at the time I had somehow allowed myself to get into an awful financial state. So Nina and I have a wonderful history of saving each other's butts, and sort of friends that goes back a ways. So she came out and ran the rehearsal and played Marie for the rehearsals.
Oh, okay.
So we could do table readings and get everyone into character. And we're getting closer and closer to the date of shooting. And finally, it was Daniel, Tim, and Louis, and I think even Dominic came to me independently afterwards, trying to be discreet and saying, "Dude, she is fantastic. She is this character. You've got to hire her. You've got to hire her." And I went to the producers, and they're like, "Yeah, but she doesn't have the other girl's got a Russian Oscar. We can sell it straight away, and so Russian rights will be a straight black. You will be financially will be in the black immediately with one sale with this other girl's name." And we got down to less than 48 hours before we're about to start filming, and I was talking every day with this actress in Russia, and finally I said, we can't wait any longer. That she's not going to have wardrobe. She's not going to be able to learn the lines. She's going to be exhausted from jet lag, and it's not the way to make movies. And so we hired Nina, who was thrilled, and Jam, and as it was, we would never have got the other actress. They didn't open up, so it was just as well. They didn't open up immigration for another 9 or 12 months, I think, you know.
Mm.
So
well, she was great in the movie, and when you had messaged me before that, you know, that she's essentially the star of the film, and you're 100% right. But here's the thing I want to ask about this is the thing I appreciate about the movie, that you mentioned before, that you know the character of Van Brunwick was, you know, speaks French and German, and then you know you wanted to find an actor that can do both, and by chance, you know, being that Daniel's from Switzerland, where French and German and Italian is like the three main languages there, he knows two of them, as far as I can tell. And I think this is actually the first time that I can recall where he actually speaks his native tongue, if you will, of his country of origin, where he's actually being able to use German and then French here too in this movie. But Nina, on the other hand, I know that she's Danish, but she speaks Norwegian, Swedish, obviously English, and then Danish. But I'm not sure if she's fluent in French, because I honestly I don't have a good ear for, you know, for the French accent. So I wasn't sure if that's something that she had to learn, or was she's already proficient in it, or did she know enough of it to kind of get by with it?
Two questions in there. So the first was, I haven't worked with Daniel before, but from three different people, strangely enough, they all recommended that I meet Daniel. A writer friend of mine, Kung Lee, who's and then another producer said, you've got to meet this guy, Daniel Bernhardt. And I said, I don't know who Daniel is. I've, you know, liked his movies, you know, and very, very, very aware of who he is. And I took a meeting with him, and it just so happened that was 2 weeks before we started. You know, it was another of the wonderful Hell Hath No Fury strokes of luck. And I spoke with him, and I really liked him. He's one of the most charming individuals you will ever meet in Hollywood. He will charm you and compliment you and sound genuine and is genuine, and it's just one of the sweetest, non-ego kind of guys you'll ever run into, who's seen the game from the very bottom all the way up to the top, lost his footing, come back down again, and worked his way by blood, sweat, and tears back up to the top again. He is in the top tier right now of stunt and action directors, fight choreographers. He's world class.
Especially coming from 8711, he's part of that crew as well.
On Nobody, John Wick's, you know, the films that he's choreographing a little bit in those, but he's also choreographing and training actors as the lead guy, and so this is someone who's seen the business inside out for all its sort of bugs and all of its wonderful moments, and I love him to pieces. He's fantastic, and yes, he speaks German fluently, French fluently, and is an incredible actor that I don't. More importantly than not having spoken his native tongue in a film before, I don't think anyone will have seen him act to this degree before.
I was actually really impressed with him in this movie.
You know, and frankly, in many ways, he's one of the most sympathetic characters in the movie. Yeah, more so than Marie. And if you really want to peel back the onion skins of who is genuine, you know, he's pretty honest about his feelings. He's never malicious towards anyone. He's a bit, you know, who cares about where they all came from. But
one of the nicer Nazis, right?
Exactly. That represented an entire nation at that point. Yeah. By the way, this is no reflection of my thoughts on that. You know,
right. Same here.
Scum suckers. But
I was joking.
In the terms of this movie, with some very twisted individuals who have seen the darker side of life and come out of it very, very affected and very marked by what they've seen, he's one of the more sympathetic, which I found interesting in the script. You know, this is the same script from Romain Serrère. So that's his story. And then the other part of the story was Nina. No, she does not speak fluent French. Okay. It's about 6 languages, I think, the Scandinavian tongues, you know, Norwegian and Danish, but also Russian, I believe she speaks. But she did a crash course in, you know, the dialogue she needed to speak for the movie. We're very lucky in that Charles Faddy plays George. Yeah. And Charles that's his job. He does French English translations for movies. You know, he does the French language, you know, and so he was on set to coach her, take her through it. I even paid him to come in when we did Nina's ADR to absolutely make sure it was as perfect as it could be, you know.
Right. He was great, by the way, in that movie. I loved him in the film.
Yeah,
he's amazing.
I think this one is really good, and there's a lot going on. He's always got a lot of backstory. You know, he comes from stage. He's played Picasso on stage as a one-man show. He's very heavily trained in the theatre and brilliant, and so he brings all of this vast knowledge and sort of enthusiasm, and he wants to know where the character was born, who his family were, you know, what kind of car, you know, what's his favorite color, his favorite meal, you know. We're going to great detail. I love all that stuff, by the way. That's one of my favorite things to do, because all of those questions the actor asks you at that point are less questions he's going to ask me on set.
Right, right, right.
He's got all the tools he needs, and he comes in, and I look over, and he's doing what he needs to do, and it becomes a directing by sort of nodding and bit more, a bit less, or speed it up a little bit more, slow it down. But I don't have to get into great conversations on set, which I hate doing because there's so much stuff going on. So if I can have all that kind of discussion ahead of time, I love it. I love it to pieces, and I'll go into great detail with the actors. And on this one, I actually wrote backstory for the actors. I said, I have it for you if you want it. If you want to come up with your own, that's fine. But I have how you tie in to this jigsaw puzzle and how it works, and you can take it.
So speaking of backstory, Dom had a recent interview too, where he had talked about, because he's obviously from Belgium, and he spoke Flemish growing up, and he speaks French. But at the time, I think when he had gotten the part, that I think he mentioned that he needed to freshen up his French again, because I think it's one of the language he doesn't speak as often as many other language he may speak.
I think when you join the French Foreign Legion, which is what Dom was in, they force you to learn. You do an accelerated French, and you learn French. Yes sir, no sir, and how far away is the guy?
Right.
Like stuff, and you learn. You have to learn very quickly. They hit you. They physically make contact. They're not like the American army. They will smack you with a rifle stock, and if you get the French, especially if you confuse it with regard to a superior officer or a sergeant chef. So he learned French in that way. So I think in his mind he'd let it go a little bit by the time we were making the movie. And yeah, he had to have a refresher, but he's brilliant.
Yeah, he was actually really good, because here's the thing that he pointed out, that again, this is a part of the backstory that I think that you mentioned before about giving the actors leeway to do so. And what he pointed out, what I thought was really interesting, because I didn't pick up on it until, well, I mean, I can't tell because of the accent, but he was talking about how, when he spoke French, he speaks like a French legionnaire, where they speak mostly in slang. So, but he was saying that that's the French that I know. So how can I use this for this character? Well, he's an older guy, and he must have been in the French Legionnaire, before the war. So therefore, he still maintained that way of speaking. So it makes sense. So it makes sense for the character. Now I can't tell. Right. So but when you watch his performance, he's fantastic in the movie. He said it. And I agree with him 100%. I think this is actually his best performance I've seen so far at this point.
Head and shoulders as far as I like. My second favorite of his is Charlie Valentine, where he played the hitman with the glasses.
Yeah, I remember that.
Saw that one, but that I thought he was very, very good in that. And then this one, I think he's brilliant in. I think where he cries when she slaps him. He explains how he's loved her the whole time, and he's never even bothered to look at him, and he's pieced together this imaginary past between the two of them, which is completely bogus, and she doesn't. It's like, who are you? I love all that. And he's clearly going a bit mental. In the old days, they didn't know what PTSD was. They called it shell shock. And then in my mind, we said he's got shell shock. He's damaged goods mentally. Whatever he saw, whatever happened to him, it was so much that it knocked him. It tweaked. When you work in this business long enough, you realize that the human brain is a delicate thing. It does only take so much pressure, and it tweaks a little bit. It goes somewhere, and he's gone at this point, and he's we're not but he retains enough to be in love, and he retains enough to sort of have this weird set of morals. But
he had like a certain naiveness about him that almost seemed very innocent in a lot of ways, where you can see his reaction talking to the American soldiers, looking for a cigarette, and then Tim Murphy's character, whose name is escaping right now in the movie, where he comes out and gives him a cigarette, and he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah." So, and he's like, and you can see it. That's the thing about the movie that I don't know if it's meant to be this way, and maybe because I perceive this way, but there's a lot of humor that I found in the film that, again, I'm not sure if it was intentional, but the thing that I found humorous was the fact that they're on the verge of killing each other, right? And they're at that breaking point. Then all of a sudden, in the drop of a hat, all right, let's work together, guys. And then they're passing cigarettes, they're sharing stories. Something about that for me, I found rather humorous. Now, I mean, again, what I'm saying is, I mean that in the compliment. Yeah.
Do we continue fighting among ourselves, or do we fight the common enemy that's just about to turn up? And
right.
In that case, let's fight. It happened throughout the Second World War. It happens throughout many, many conflicts, but more so the Second World War, where you had sides continuously changing. In France, with the Vichy, and the non-Vichy French, and in Italy with the, you know, the fascist and the non-fascist Italians, and you know, you had people, you know, and then you'd have the certain people that would change sides within those sides.
Right.
You know, and I love all of that. That's human.
Yeah.
The human condition, Rob. That's the wonderful thing. That's why we make movies. You know.
Yeah.
We love it.
And you know who I also want to highlight too is your good friend Luc Lafontaine, who I know has been in several of your movies before. And this movie, I think, to me, is the one that I've actually noticed him the most as an actor, because the other stuff that I can recall him being a part of your production, as far as in front of the camera is concerned, more or less, if I can recall correctly, just like almost like a bit player. He's there, you know, but he's not really like the main focus. In this particular case, like
Luke is a very good actor.
Yeah.
I get told off by crew members and cast because I'm too mean to him. But I love him to pieces, and he is a pretty good actor. But yeah, I come in for a lot of flack because I'm quite mean to him on set, but he does okay.
Well, he's really good in the movie, though. That's what I was trying to point out. He's actually very, very good with what he's been able to do in this movie. I mean, really, the thing that I thought that I took away from the most was that the interactions of these four soldiers here. You know, you have I'm trying. The name's escaping right now for all the soldiers, but there's the black fella who gets killed by Clement.
Yeah,
that's his name. Yeah,
who's phenomenal. I love him. He's in Debt Collector too, obviously.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I do remember him.
Also, a great part in White Elephant as well. He's
okay.
He's someone I really enjoy working with because he is a big, scary guy.
Yeah,
you know, his physique, and then he talks, and the voice is like this gentle, you know,
it's angelic in a lot of ways.
You know, I'm the guy that you tell your entire life story to. You know, I'll listen, and you know, I'll come up with an answer that makes you feel calm and loved. You know, and it doesn't.
Right. And I'm glad you pointed it out too, because that's what I got from the scene that he and George had together, where they're in the little shack that they were in, and you have that moment with them when they're conversing with each other, and he has a certain demeanor about him.
Movie, by all means.
Yeah, he was the nicest guy out of the crew, right? But you know, again, like that, like those little moments I thought really helped out and separating, you know, who's the most vicious and who's the least of the group, and you can almost tell by that pecking order there too, and especially with Tim's character, who was, you know, willing to to kill Marie at the drop of a hat, because, you know, for obvious reasons. But you know, but the thing is that with everyone's interactions with one another, especially the four American soldiers, you know, Lewis, when I found out Lewis was going to be in the movie, I knew he was going to do great. I mean, I knew that 100% from the moment that I heard his name on the as far as the cast is concerned. But Tim Murphy is an actor that I am very familiar with, but I can't really recall why I don't remember most of the stuff he's been in. But when I look back at his filmography, I was, oh yeah, I have seen it. So it was a lot like Louis Mandylor.
Tell you what, everyone remembers True Detective.
Right.
True Detective. They remember the Mayans. They remember Sons of Anarchy.
Right.
But the one that everyone has had implanted is the advert for the insurance, where he plays the Russian mobster with the miniature giraffe in his. And everyone remembers that series of commercials, although they can't quite put their name to Tim. He plays the Russian oligarch, you know, a billionaire mobster type thing. But no, he's you know, he's obviously in what's the World War II one that set Germans and Nazis present day. But he's in that one as well. Snowpiercer he was in, you know, so he's in all of these pictures, and he's very, very much in the subliminal conscious. I've known him, you know, since my first film, you know, going back 20 years, The Doorman, and which, you know, he was in Pit Fighter. He's just some. Listen, when COVID hit and I had this opportunity to make a movie, I didn't have an awful lot of money. We had some money. I decided I didn't want to have anyone new. I wanted to only work with people I'd either worked with before, who came extraordinarily well recommended, because it was going to be a guerrilla operation. You know, it was going to be, you know, roll up your sleeves. You know, there's no catering, there's no craft service. You know, everyone's got to wear masks, so we have the minimum amount of people, and we're just going to get in there and make a film and see what happens. So I didn't really want to take risks with an actor I hadn't worked with before.
Right.
You know, just not as much for my sake as for their sake, because I can get quite impassioned when I make these pictures, and people who know me realize it's just me getting enthusiastic about it. But if you put someone new into that, they're going to think I'm an absolute raving madman. So it was, you know, I brought in, and Tim was perfect, and I called him up. You know, basically everyone I called said yes. We had one person on the crew that said no, and it was because she had boyfriend who was symptomatic, highly, vulnerable to the whole thing. But everyone else said, "Yep, I'm there. I need to work, man. I'm climbing the walls at home," and it was a beautiful experience,
Right.
So I had my dream cast: Louis, Tim, Joseph, George. When I read the script, that character could have been written for Dominic. By the way, it was uncanny the way he was described in the script, the way he walked, moved, talked, everything, and it was like, God. And I really tried for about a month to think of anyone else who could play it, because I didn't want to be that obvious. And then it's like, no, it's obvious. It's you're reading the script and you're seeing Dominic's face as the dialogue's being said, because I know Dom, and he's always teeters on the edge of of sanity for me. In real life, he's probably saner than the rest of us in reality, but for me, it's the character is
right.
Especially when he was a little younger. It's something that I found very appealing. I would hang out with Dom for a lunch and then go off and write crazily for the rest of the day, basing characters around his way of speaking of
his vernacular and all.
I loved it.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. You hang out with a bunch of film people, all they want to do is make movies, and they'll do almost anything to get another movie made. It's a very singular mentality. You have to mix that up, and you have to hang out with people like Dominic and professional soldiers and professional policemen. The odd professional criminal doesn't go and see that, and you listen to their motivations in life and the way they get up in the morning, how they feel, and how they want their work. And this is where you get the juicy stuff. It doesn't come from your imagination; it comes from chatting with those guys.
Right, and a lot of the scripts you've actually come up with here. I remember before, and you mentioned on more than one occasion that they've all come from direct inspiration of somebody that you have spoken with that have provided some insight of what they've gone through, and then has hence generated films like Debt Collector's Avengement and a few other things as well too. Yeah, well, so when I messaged Lewis about what he had, what my thoughts on the film and what he was expressing, believe it or not, he's one of those guys that and I know you know him well enough to know this already. I would think that he's so good at what he does that I always believe that his level of confidence has got to be at an all-time high, considering the amount of work he's done and what he's been able to pull off, and how on point he is when it comes to the craft. It almost seemed like though he wasn't that confident after he had done it. And I hope that when I'm saying this, it doesn't come off in a negative light, but I think for me, it came off more as if he took a risk and he just hoped it would pay off because he wasn't sure if it will pay off. If I'm making any sense by asking that question.
Of the actors I've worked with, the truly best ones are rarely super confident of what they've done. It's not till a while afterwards, when it galvanizes and people like it, that they start to, okay. It's a very nerve-wracking thing. It's an incredible thing that these guys do. It's terrifying what they do, and matching the progression, the arc, what's going on, where that person is at that particular point, 15, 20 times, takes over and over. It's an incredible thing. They're racked with self-doubt a lot of the time. And nervousness is, they're creating something brand new. It's easy for us to look at it and go, well, I would have done that differently. That's horseshit. If you're on set and the camera's pointed and you're the first person to do it, you don't have that hindsight to be able to make that decision. It's terrifying for most of them. Every once in a while, I'll put myself in the front of the camera just to remind myself how awe-inspiringly terrifying it really is.
You actually have a cameo in the movie too, am I correct?
I think there's one or two in there. Yeah.
Yeah, there was in the aircraft scene where you're dropping the bombs. That was you. I actually saw that behind the scene. Because here's the thing. When I don't mean to change the subject from Lewis here, but when last year when you had talked about the movie, you said it was is a secret project, but I didn't know the scale of the as far as the production was concerned. When you had posted on your Instagram page of when you guys were at an actual air carrier of some sort with the actual World War II planes, and then you had like a green mat where the bomb was being dropped off. When I saw that footage on your account, I realized, oh shit, this is actually a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. So I was really excited to see what the final product was. And when I saw how everything played at the end, I was really rather impressed about how it all came, and seeing the final product here. But I mean, when you're shooting when you're shooting the whole thing, and then you're putting everything together, was there a part of you that was kind of nervous about how it actually would look, or were you confident, okay, we've got all the players in motions here for who we can send this off to put it all together and make it look as great as possible?
It was reverse engineered, initially that in the script you don't see the planes at all. You see all the bombs from the planes going on. That's it. I talked to my visual effects friend Kevin Van Hook, who I've now done 4 or 5 movies with, who I love. He's also a genre film director. He's done some horror movies and fantasy movies. He's a comic book guy, you know, brilliant mind, very, very creative. And I said, look, I need a bomber. Is there any you have anything, you know, in your because you have to create the 3D model in visual effects, you know, that's the expensive part. And I said, do you have anything in your library? He said, well, it's funny you should mention that. We have a B-25 that we built for the Great Raid that we never used. And we have the 3D blueprint of it. And I was like, oh, that's fantastic. Can I give you a few, you know, can I give you some dollars and we'll get that one? He's like, yeah, there's something else you may be interested. We built this based on one that's in a museum in Corona, and we're friends with the people at the museum. So we called the museum, and they're like, you know, we've got no customers at the moment. It's COVID. Can we come in and shoot for a day on the actual B-25 that he's got, so we can tie it together? And they're like, do you have an extra role in the movie? And I said, well, we've run out of money, so myself and the producer's son are going to play the people in the plane. But if your guy wants to be in the plane, and so the pilot of the plane is the owner of the museum in
Oh, the older fella.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I remember that.
That was an actual World War II B-25.
Right.
Me and the producer's son and the guy that curates the museum, and then the CG version was obviously one that was done off that. So this is a sequence that cost more than our movie would cost to make had we started from scratch, but luckily the places were all in position. And so it was reverse engineered. I'm like, well, we can actually do this. You know, we can actually put this in the movie, you know, which was fantastic.
So did I give you a boost of confidence considering how everything turned out for how it
that before? So yes, it was. I don't know if confidence is the word, but it's like seize it. If you can get it and put it in your movie,
got it.
Go for it. You know, and, you know, whether I had to pay for it, the producer pays for it.
Right.
Get it in the film, because anything that you know, these are the small details that make a film interesting and exciting. Like the guns are all real World War II guns.
Yeah. I heard that too. Yeah.
These are details that people, you know, the uniforms were beautifully put together by Hugh Daly and Larry Michel. And so there was an awful lot of sort of research that went into it that pays off. And you try and do that, and you try and give the audience those kind of things, because that people love that, you know, they love those details. Right. Yeah, you seize it, man. Grab it. Both hands.
I think it looked great in the movie too. So, you know, and here's another thing I wanted to ask you about too. So the vehicles in the movie too, all those scenes with those vehicles you mentioned before were all shot out in Minsk. Is that correct?
All over the place.
Okay.
We matched a lot of the stuff in Minsk that we had in SoCal. There's a scene where the Germans are speaking in a vehicle hangar. The vehicle behind him is an oversized half track, and it's the only one in the US. And these things are, you know, $600,000, you know, if you wanted to buy one. And that's the one that we just have parked behind Von Bruckner as he's talking. There's fun stuff like that in the picture if you look at it. But yeah, we got very lucky with the vehicles. A lot of these reenactors have their own sort of things. And so we had reenactors play a lot of the sort of Germans, because they do the uniforms beautifully. They also looked at some of the other uniforms that are being done. They take great pride in, you know, the living history aspect of what they do. And there is, you know, you again, to match that on a movie would be incredibly expensive. Right. You know? So we were very lucky. But the 300 soldiers in Minsk were dressed, you know, they have, in Belarus, they have one of the biggest World War II sort of prop and wardrobe departments anywhere in Eastern Europe. That's where the old former Soviet Union would go to make their World War II movies. So they consequently have these incredible storage hangars full of machine guns and rifles and, you know, Waffen, you know, SS uniforms. And it's, you know, pictures you see like Sevastopol or Stalingrad, all of the uniforms have come from, you know, Belarus film, which is in Minsk. So it's pretty cool.
Do you think this is the hardest project you've ever worked on, as far as, you know, the scale of it and the, you know, the locations you shot, and then of course, because, you know, because you mentioned before that Dom had pretty much had it the hardest here because he's underground.
He had the hardest shoot himself on this. He got so injured on it, beaten, punched, burned, shot. He got shot by the Zerk gun like 3 times in the face, which I'm not sure. He didn't have a work finish on that, but it's a big golf ball sized hematoma that came off it. The guy's just a beast, you know. I don't know if you've met him or talked to him, but there's no one quite like him. You know, he's an inner strength with Dom that resonates, and I love putting him in my pictures. But no, the film for me was sheer love from the moment we started through to the end. There's scary moments and some nerve-wracking moments.
Yeah.
But the most difficult film I've ever made was White Elephant, where we got closed down midway through, and you know, by the union.
You said White Elephant?
Yeah, that was the most difficult film.
Oh, okay.
Very, very stressful. You know, I set a bomb off in the streets on the film on that one, which looks fantastic with permits. It was all talked about, and they tried. You know, the film crew itself, the film company itself, tried to, or has penalised me for money for that. I mean, it was just a very, very strange shoot altogether.
Oh, interesting.
But that's neither here nor there. But everything about Hell Hath No Fury was, you know, it was joy. It was very, very hard work, but you love that kind of work when you're a filmmaker. You know, you're up to your knees in blood and mud and sweat and, you know, emotions and dust and gunfire going off and blood birthing around, and you know, and then you're talking about the characters all very, very heavily in character because they've done the film chronologically. So you're having these discussions from the beginning of the day through to the end about motivation, story, and why they're there. And this is the most exciting thing in the world, Rob. This is the most wonderful. This is living, you know, at its absolute most intense. And if you grow up wanting to be a filmmaker, when you get the chance to do a film like this, and it wraps and it's gone well all the way through, it was hard work physically. Mentally, I got a poison oak, got some scratches, but all of that, just you forget all that. You've had this incredible adventure, which is wonderful. And you hope to God you've managed to get some of that onto the screen, so when people watch it, they have at least a fraction of the feeling that you had when you were putting it together. Because it's, you know, I've been the other way, where you've had a wonderful time on set, you've made this film, you watch the film, and it's like, wow, what happened to all that work that we put? But with Hell Hath No Fury, I feel that it's carried across, and you can feel that. I'm at a point in my game, I think, where I can convey that at a better level and a better quality than I ever have done before. So I hope people enjoy this picture. I really, really do. Because it was a hell of an adventure making it. It really was. You know, it was like back to the time of Marion C. Cooper and John Ford, you know, when they would go out in tents and make a film, you know, and they'd be cut off from their families and the people they loved, and they'd make this and come back 3 months later with hopefully something of artistic worth. And that's what I hope I've achieved on this one.
You know, I wanted to ask you about, you know, when you work on a movie, especially as of late, you know, in the last couple of years now, the way things have been going for you, when you're done with one project, I mean, especially in the last couple of months when you and I have been chatting back and forth, you know, you already had one project already set up before, you know, before you already finished the current project working on. So, a part of me was always wondering about you, and maybe just a filmmaker in general, but mainly you. When you're done with what you're doing, do you ever get tired? I'm not saying tired of it, but just tired as in like, just give me a break. Let me get a month out for me to just recollect myself and then come on back. Or are you just better off moving to the next one?
Picture, you're burned. You know, you're burned for. It used to be about a week. Now it's about 2 weeks, and you're better off not talking business. Definitely not taking any meetings. Staying away from interviews for about 2 weeks, because you'll be so burned after that rack that it's not you speaking, it's the burnt out carcass of you, and what comes out of your mouth will sound cynical and worn out, and it only lasts a week or two, but you're better off for that period going somewhere like a holiday, or even going and writing something, or doing something that rebuilds, that re-energizes. And then suddenly one day you're back into it again. It's like, okay, what are we doing next? You know, and it comes back again. But yeah, it lasts about a week, 10 days.
Okay.
Peckinpah, someone like said, it's like someone dying. It's like a death in the family somewhere. It's a form of death, because it's gone. It's the end of all of that energy, all of that emotion, all of that, sort of adrenaline, and it's just a great big dump. And so it takes you a little bit to get your energy back. And that's a good point. What I do is I let my editor make his editor's cut of all the raw material, and that takes about 2 weeks, and that's the perfect sort of space to get your energy back, and then you're back into it again. And I'll write for that as well, and because quite often you're in such a weird headspace that writing seems like someone else's writing when you review it a couple of weeks later, which can be quite exciting as well. But yeah, better not to do anything that involves hustling or pitching yourself, because you'll be a bit burned out. You're like, oh, I don't know if I can ever do this again. Nothing will be, so.
Right.
Believe me, that's not what you want. You want to be energized and caffeined up when you're going for meetings in Hollywood. You want to be the guy with all the answers.
So now with these next set of projects that you have coming down the pipeline here, are you? So I'm trying to make sure how I want to ask this correctly here. Are the projects that are coming to you, are these projects coming up that they were set to do? Are they projects that you were looking for, or projects that were presented to you that made you interested in pursuing them?
All of the above.
Okay.
It's about 3 of these that were original scripts I wrote that I either had, I often will bring in 2 or 3 other writers to polish my work. As I say, I have zero ego when it comes to the writing credit. I don't care about that. It's, it's making having the best blueprint possible, So there's 3 or 4 of those. There's 5 that have come from other producers that have come to me that actually they're of such a high level. I'm not going to do any writing on them at this point. They're ready to, the scripts came in and it's like, I've got to be involved in this. This is brilliant. Let's go out there and run with it, cast it, try and get it financed. But they have to slot in, with time wise, and then there's 2 that came from other sources as well. But yeah, no, it's all across, it runs the gamut. I'm not, I've also put a writing call out. How many have we got left? We're about 20 scripts have been, we've had a submission of about 40, 42, and we're down to the last 20. We're reading, we read the scripts and see what's coming in as well, finding out, finding new material, always seeing what's out there, what's edgy, what's different, what's cool, what can we do, what might fit a certain financing framework or an actor that I know that's calling me,
But are you looking at like a specific set of story that you are interested in pursuing, or is it just whatever comes to the table that is going to pique your interest?
Whatever comes to the table piques my interest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not, it's easier to sell me with action. It's a more obvious sale, but for the most part, there's a couple here which are not really action movies. They've got one rodeo picture. If you think of the actual bull riding as the action sequences, it's an action film, but beyond that, it's a family, Christmas film, but it's very, very powerful and very, very emotional and very, there's tearful moments in it where I was crying when I was reading the script. The guy goes, all out, and this is a story that I would love to do. I'd give a finger to do it, because people will watch it. People will watch good stories, especially one that makes you cry and one that has Christmas elements. They'll come back. There are films that I watched that were Christmas set movies that, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang type films. I know that's not a Christmas movie that would come once a year, but you watch it. You watch it. It became part of your DNA as a film. I want to make a film like that. I have another film that's based on a very famous ecological warrior, a guy that's alive now. I can't talk too much about that one, but it's, I read this script and it's like a Tom Hanks Spielberg style script, and it's like, I have to do this. Get me on this. I don't care what happens to the agents. I need to do this film at some point. It's a piece of material that will appeal to a major actor. Let's do this, And so that's one that we've got going for. And so this is exciting stuff, man. It's really lives, and there's some action pictures in there, hardcore sort of shoot 'em ups, but I don't really want to do films that are defined by their genre either. He's an action filmmaker. He's a martial arts filmmaker. I thought when I was making my films with Scott, they had to have martial arts sequences in, because that was that was something that was desired by the sales agent. But I did my utmost to make them look unlike any other martial arts film. Everything I could in my power to make them, 2 debt collectors who work for the mob, who are bickering all the time. The film that's basically a revenge story in a pub. These are not that you would normally associate with being, martial arts films that, we're talking today. Out of all the scripts we've been given, probably 50% of them involve the protagonist's family, wife or children being murdered in the first act, and him being an ex-CIA, ex-special forces, or ex-detective or ex-policeman going after the antagonists. And it's like, I don't want to do a film that we've seen before. This is the most boring setup ever. At least make it a dog like John Wick, or something a little different. It's no joke. It's 50% scripts that was,
I believe you.
With the last script call that went out. And I said, if we get one like that, read it to make sure it's not something magical. But I'm not interested. I don't want to see another family killed. I don't want to shoot it. If that's the best you can come up with for the reason for drama, for making that script, it's it's a cop out.
So when as things are moving along for you now, you have a line of work set up for you to moving forward with these projects. Are they all set in stone as far as, once you're done with this, we got this next in line, or is it still kind of up in the air until, well, once you're done with this here, we still have to put the pieces together for this one here, and that was still in talks? I mean, what's the progress on that?
No film is solid until you're on set.
Okay.
Way through on White Elephant, they tried to pull the carpet out of me. I'd been shooting for 10 days, and 12 days, and it was a weekend. And we didn't know if we were coming back on the Monday. They bought tickets for my DP, my special effects man, Luke, the stunt coordinator. They bought all of their tickets to fly home Monday morning. And we were going to quit the movie midway through because of the union shift. It started as a non-guild movie and was going to become a guild movie. And for a period of 72 hours, we're in the balance whether the film's just going to collapse and implode. So there's no assurances in this game whatsoever. And that was a Bruce Willis, Michael Woodward, had all the cast in it. So nothing is ever for real. But these ones are financed. Every single one of them is financed. They're in the process of casting. So it's as close as you can be. I'm purposely not wanting to do much because I want to do as much as much press as possible on Hell Hath No Fury. And I want to be 100% available for doing post on White Elephant. So because that's how good films are made. You stay with the film right to the point of it being delivered. You're there for every line of ADR. You're there for every day of the mix, and you're there for for the final run through of the music. And you make sure this, especially an action movie where the guns and the punches define whether the film is going to succeed or not. You have to be there. I'm a craftsman. I don't understand directors who wouldn't be there to the end. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm available in LA till the end of that, and then you go on to the next movie.
So let me ask you about shooting film now, because I think the last time when we talked, you were talking about how films are being shot elsewhere where it's more convenient for the production to be shot there for a number of different reasons. Atlanta being one of those examples of that, New Orleans and things and places like that. But for you though, especially now in the last couple of years, are you starting to see as far as California being like another hotspot where everything's coming back to it again, or do you feel like it's still having to work its way back up again to be in the same level of I guess Atlanta, New Orleans, or any of these other locations here?
I like shooting in LA. I moved to LA from England. It's the business changes. You've got to be ready to film wherever it takes you. I like the energy of Los Angeles. I love working here. It's very difficult to shoot here. It's very expensive. There's a lot of guilds and unions and permits and location issues that everyone wants maximum bucks for renting anything out here, and it's a bit of a pain. I don't really get involved in rebates, or I'm not a financier. I cast my movies. I love writing and creating a fantasy world. I tend to leave financing to the producers. I wish I enjoyed producing more because I produce pictures in between directing, but I love directing and I love making movies, and I'm just not that interested in the other part of it. I like going to exotic places to make movies. Right. I find that inspiring. I love meeting cast and crew from other countries and cultures, and Thailand and Bahamas, and I've been all over the world, and I love doing that, and I find that very exhilarating and energizing. you know, what we're dealing with is sort of on a it's just a money, you know, union, and some of it's valid and some of it is just greedy, and you know, some of it's artistic and some of it is counterproductive to the art of making films. But you just have to be able to, you don't have excuses when you have to make the best film you can and work out how that works. But I do love Hollywood. I wish there was more going on here, but you know, my daughter's a director. She's doing it. She's moved to England to do, you know, to make horror movies, which is her passion. And I've been to visit her, and I think that she has as much a chance of making it as a director staying in England, and you know, she's an American with an American accent, being in England and putting together pictures there, and as she would staying here. It maybe even a better chance, because there's such a thriving indie film world over there that we don't have in LA anymore. I don't think it's the same as it was when I arrived here 20 years ago, when, you know, I was like 21 and everyone else was 21. It was just a bunch of people. We all wanted to make movies. We'd all come here from different states, different countries. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think people are staying where they are, or, you know, and making movies where they are, and the films are going to, you know, the internet and being seen by people in a way that wasn't possible 20 years ago, you know. So I'm not sure if leaving your, you know, maybe it's smarter to stay where you can get a whole bunch of friends together to make a film. Right. You know, maybe that's the smarter thing to do than to come to LA, where it's now become such a hardcore financial business to raise money to film in a location. You know, you put your cameras down on the street in Hollywood without a permit, you're going to jail. You know, it's no joke. You know, it's, you know, and I've done it quite a few times without a permit to grab B-roll, and we've got one guy looking this way and one guy looking that way while you get your quick shot, jump in the back of the car with the camera and you're off, you know, on Debt Collector. That was how we put the film together, you know. Yeah. But you know, in England, you can go set up and the cop will come over and you'll say, "Oh, I'm making a film here. We don't have much money," and he'll say, "Oh, great, you know, be careful. You know, do you want me to help you in any way?" And this is a different world. I went back there and I shot 2 films. I loved it. An excellent Benjamin. It was wonderful. All young crew coming in, all hungry. They all from all over Europe. They come to London to join the film industry. It reminded me of the LA that I came to in the late 90s. You know,
was that I mean, Benjamin and Axeman? Those are the first and 2 only films you ever done in England. Is that right?
I made a short film there, and I made music videos.
Okay.
And it was just very, very difficult back then. That was pre-Guy Ritchie, pre all those sort of, you know, the mob films that really sort of reignited the English film industry, and then it's got its own legs now. So all that were being made at that point, that I felt, and I was probably wrong about this, I'll be kind of mean about it, but it felt like the only films that were being made were by producers who had Eton College backgrounds, and the films were made, you know, about, you know, sort of Victorian men and you know, finding love and in, you know, Victorian, or, you know, World War I era, merchant library sort of, which I, you know, the films are good, they're okay, but they weren't my cup of tea. I was watching spaghetti westerns, you know. Right. I wanted to see, you know, Mad Max. I wanted to see, you know, I loved the way they made. I read about how they made The Road Warrior, and you know, these were pictures. Right. I was so invigorated by the way that Mad Max was made in Australia for peanuts, and then got financed for The Road Warrior, because they, you know, this is what I wanted to know about. What not you know, not right. Room with a View. You know what I mean? And Room with a View is a beautiful film, and as I've aged, I love Merchant Library, and there's a lot to be said for that. But that seemed to be all that was being made in the England that I left, and I had to get out of there. It didn't suit me at all. I came to America, did the Dolph Lundgren film with, you know, to start with, and have not stopped working since, and have loved every second of it. I adore my career, and I love America, and I love Americans, and I'm an American now. I've got my passport. I love everything about this country. But if I were giving advice to a 20-year-old, 20-something who's getting into the game, I'd say stay where you are, where you can get through together, where your friends are, where you're comfortable, where you don't have to pay a lot of rent. Maybe your mother cooks your meals for you. Maybe she does your laundry and you don't have to worry about that. Mother, stay with them, make your movies there, get them seen online, and have Hollywood call you and bring you here. Because it's expensive to live there. It's expensive to make movies. You know, there's no young crew. They've all gone straight to union. You know, they're expensive there, man. A few grand a week to get your union, you know, crew members. It's no joke. Right. These guys are really really bloody good at what they do. They're safe, they're quick, they're brilliant. The film looks fantastic. It moves really, really quickly, and but you have a big, expensive set, but it moves really quick, man. It moves. I've directed a couple of union pictures, and you are in prep, and you tell them what you want. You get to set, you come out of your wagon in the morning, and you walk over to the set with your coffee. On a non-union film, you'd be pulling everyone over there, telling them what you wanted. You walk out in a union picture, and I'd be damned if the crane's not there, the camera's set up, the lens is on it, the AD's, done his homework, he knows what's going on, the gripper's done his homework, he knows what's going on, the DP and his team are all standing around, and they're like, what do you need, boss? What are we doing first? Or say action, and it's like, good God, it's going to be fun, and it's
right.
You feel like you're with the big boys. No, any day of the week, if you get, I love, a professional unit like that. It's fantastic. Now, the reality of it is you're cutting your teeth. You're going to do non-union to get, to get where you want to, but it's exhausting. It's exhausting because a lot of these guys can't get it. They're simply not qualified to do anything else. They turn up, you fired him last week as a sound guy, and he turns up this week as a camera assistant. Like, what are you doing? I was like, it's a form of filmmaking, but it's hard work, like pulling teeth. I did a low budget movie quite a few years back, and we had a crew that was inexperienced to the point of it, me wanting to walk on the movie. It just made no sense. You'd explain what you wanted, and I'd have to go around to every member of the crew and show them. Anyway, doesn't matter now. It sounds like I'm whining. Hell hath no fury. Didn't have that at all. We had a fantastic crew, a fantastic cast, and it kicked ass, and I'm really, really proud of it.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to just point out one other thing about Health and Fear, since you segued to that. When I reflect on the time that we had the conversation, I remember distinctly seeing your excitement for the movie. It was obviously very, very proud of what you were doing, and you were very excited. Obviously, you couldn't talk about it. So that always stuck with me. And then, of course, when I did talk to Lewis, he had the same, anticipation for the movie. And then, of course, now when we saw the trailer, I messaged you about that. I thought, this looks brilliant. It looks really, really good. And I told you before that I thought that this was going to probably be your best movie by far. And I felt that was the case here. So here's what I'm curious now, because again, you're coming off of, a set of action movies, or at least in some people's eyes to be action films. You're leaving one particular genre that more or less has really helped you with your career. Now moving into something outside of that genre, if you will. Is there a part of you that's a little nervous about people expecting, Jesse V. Johnson, but doing action, or hopefully people giving you the benefit of doubt to?
Listen, I think the bigger, all that doesn't matter as long as you're telling a great story and it's exciting and
good point.
Thrill. That's all. I never, as I mentioned,
I think that's an honest answer you gave right there.
Never think of myself as a genre filmmaker. It doesn't, if you think of yourself that way, you're setting your standards pretty low right from the get-go.
I get you.
I try and tell the best story possible, throw as much at the screen and the story and the characters as I can to keep the audience enthusiastic and questioning and entertained. We're making entertainment, we're telling stories around a campfire. Now the bigger question is, am I doing a film without Scott Adkins, and are people going to come see it?
That's a fair question.
That's because I have been so lucky to share his enormous success, with him a little bit in a small degree, as I've made these 5 movies with him, because his incredible following, by the way, which is so fantastic, and no one seems to be ever picking up on that on the big studio pictures, that they look at Scott and they don't realize he's got the same following as a lot of their stars have. But the same ability. So it's one of those injustices of Hollywood, but that's another conversation altogether. The bigger question is, are people going to come see a picture without him, that I've made? So that was a risk, but at the end of the day, you got to make it, haven't you? Got to do it. And I love this story. Nina is brilliant in it, as far as I'm concerned. I've got a great supporting cast. I think there's some good action in there as well.
Yeah, there is. There definitely is. Yeah.
I don't think it's without a little bit of the old visceral thrills. We've got some stabbings and shootings and explosions, and and it's a very taut, tight script and a tight, exciting story. So there's if I worried about whether people would enjoy the pictures, too much, you'd never make a film, would you? You've got to trust your gut a bit. And honestly, I'd go and see Hell Hath No Fury before I'd probably go and see some of the Scott films that I've made if I were a stranger, because I'm not really drawn to martial arts movies. I don't really like watching a film because it's a martial arts movie. If I knew about those films, I would have gone to them. But honestly, Hell Hath No Fury to me is something that really excites me. The genre excites me. It's a little different, it's edgy. Hopefully people will turn out and see it and give it a chance.
I want to highlight something about you too. And again, I hope you don't mind me doing this here because with the questions I happen to ask you here, you actually in a lot of ways have changed my perspective too about how I'm looking at things, because I think a lot of it's just by default where I look at something a certain way and I'm asking it a certain way, and then you point out something that was so obvious, but I just didn't really look at it that way. So this is one of the reasons why I was highlighting before in the beginning that you really had changed my perception of how I look at certain things, especially when it comes to films. I always felt like the way that you tell stories, when people ask you a question, you have a really unique response on how you yourself look at it. And then I would hope that in turn that would encourage people to look at it, either not necessarily look at the way you do, but really more to understand your approach and then try to look at it that way to see if it makes sense for them as well too. Because as I'm listening to you talk, there's so much that goes through my mind right now on with what you're saying, how understand your position from that, and then in turn, even now when as I'm thinking about Hell Hath No Fury, and where I was saying that I wish we had more time, and you explained the approach you took with the story, and I was like, well, that's obvious. Why didn't I think of that before? Of course, but this is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you too, because I always felt like whenever I had listened to you talk, I've learned something that you have shared that has really changed my perception on looking at certain things, and also learned to appreciate the art form for what it is, which is obviously not an easy thing to do. And I respect the people that do that. But I also appreciate the people that understand the value of just making a good film. And that's pretty much what I've actually taken away from the last set of questions I've asked you here. I was pointing out certain things, but you point out the most obvious thing in my opinion. So I hope you don't mind me rambling on about that, but I've got to give you your props about that, because that's something that I truly respect about you as a person, but also you as a filmmaker as well too, because those little details I picked up on when it comes to your films for the really from the last 4 or 5 years since I've gotten to become acquainted with your movies. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say here.
I'm not really appreciate that.
Oh, well, you're welcome, but no, I really do mean that here though. So as I said before, I'm going to have this episode here air the day of the film's release, so that way all the things we've got into as far as the spoilers are concerned will be we don't have to worry about cutting that out, because it'll be
I left them all in there, so there's a lot of stuff in here that will give away the story, but at the end of the day it doesn't matter much. I think people will still enjoy the film.
Yeah, I think so too.
But
well,
I
I just want to give you a lot of praise for what you've done here, man. And I'm always looking forward to see what you've got coming down the pipeline here. I'm very excited to see how White Elephant has turned out, because I know that last time I heard you talk about that, you had turned in a first edit of the film, and then that's the last thing I had heard about that. So I'm curious to see how that's going to come out here. And but yeah, man, is there anything else that you want to highlight before we close out? I
would truly love people to see this picture on the big screen if they can get the opportunity. I don't know the breadth of the release, but I think major cities. But if they can see it on the big screen, go see it, because it's shot in anamorphic, with beautiful quick lenses. This is the way to see it as big as possible. And it is beautiful. It's a beautiful looking picture, well acted, with some good action in it, and good story. So I would say, if you get the chance, see it on the big screen. If not, it'll be streaming 2 weeks later, I'm sure, somewhere. So.
All right, Jesse. Well, I'm going to leave it to here. I appreciate your time here. You have yourself a wonderful day. Stay safe out there. And if you can thank Tatiana for me for setting this up here, I really do appreciate it as well, too. But otherwise, you enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks again for everything here.
Thank you, Rob. Really
have a good one.